Welcome to Section 5, Part 3. We're going to be doing box selection setup today. Quite a bit to get through, so we're going to crack straight in. I'll try and explain what I plan to do briefly, but just if you are just watching this and you haven't watched the previous selection video, we did cover a number of variables that were needed for the box selection, and that's these ones here. And these were set up in the select function here. If you don't have this part done, this is required for, it's just the initial positions for the box selection, and we'll be using those in our calculations. So the plan for the box selection today is to be able to use a widget to display the box selection to the player, and but for the actual physical box selection, we're going to be using planes. So we're going to draw planes down through our viewport, and whatever's inside those planes is inside the box, and it will also line up to the widget. We also created the is box selection, and in the select hold, we're just choosing between whether it's a box selection or a normal single selection. So we'll start with some variables. We're going to need a variable for our widget. Actually, we'll create the widget class first because we'll need that for the variable. So let's come into framework, and it's just going to be a widget, a user widget. I'll place that in framework UI folder. Abstract. We're only going to need two functions in here, just a initializer, so we'll do the native uninitialized, and then we'll just need a function to draw the actual selection box. So really we're just changing the size of the like a border widget. So we've got our start and end position, so that'll be the top left and bottom right corner. Actually, before I build those, I'll just put in projected section. Find widget metadata here, so make this read only. So it'll bind it to the widget that we add in the editor. Therefore, declaration for view border, and then we'll build these functions. So on initialize, we just want to set the box itself to be not visible, so we don't want it to show up. And that's included the border.h there. That's all we need for that. And then we'll just check if our box is valid. And we need to change the box visibility again. But this time we want to change it based on whether we should draw or not. So that'll be visible if this is true, hidden if it's false. And then if we should draw, sorry. We need to change the actual canvas size, so we're going to get a reference to the canvas panel. Canvas panel slot is what we want there, so it's going to add the H file. We're going to use the widget layout library. Again, going to include that widget layout library.h. So now we can start setting the position of the widget. Just going to copy, change this to Y. And then the size will be the start minus the end. Going to be start.x, end.x, start.y. That. And then for our canvas slot, we can start using those params there. So we're going to set the position, set the size. So that's all we need for the widget. close it off. Now for the, oh sorry, we were creating this. So this will be our widget class here. So it'll be a box selection widget, and that's going to have a forward declaration for that. And we'll just call box selection. So now we're going to need to create that widget. So in our select hold, so while we're holding, this is the first time we're going to need the widget, is when we actually go to hold the mouse. We're going to check if we don't have a box selection widget. We're going to create the widget. Actually, we should be making those virtual. Just if we have another subclass, we'll be able to override them if we want to. Could have some different type of box selection or something like that. Or maybe you don't want to use box selection and you want to just override and take it out. Anyway, so we need to create our widget now. We're going to need a reference to the actual class. So it'll be the actual widget class from the editor. So what I might do is do a developer settings for entities. Like we did for core, got the framework settings and developer settings. I'll close core and let's create that. So we're just calling it settings. We're using the backed by cvars parent class and we're putting in settings folder. I might just cheat again and copy the core settings. Change this to I might actually copy that as well. So I've got let's copy this. And this will be our we're going to use soft pointer, so it'll be a T class pointer and it'll be to our box selection widget. All we need there is copy this class. So in here we want to get our developer settings. Add the include for that, for the RTS settings, RTS entity settings. And now we want to, because it was a soft pointer, we want to load the soft pointer to see if it's valid. All right, settings. It load synchronous, we'll just load it immediately. And then we can assign and then we can create the widget. That's going to include the user widget.h. Owner will be this. The reason why I'm doing load synchronous is you can just use get here, or if it's loaded, get will retrieve the loaded class. If you just use load synchronous, it'll get it. It'll load if it's not loaded, or it'll get it if it's already loaded. So it sort of covers both bases. Better to do it that way. All we need there, so turn that off there. And then if it's successful, we want to add it to the report. And this is red because I've got the const. So now we want to create the functions that actually talk to this widget and tell it what size it needs to be. So if you remember on the box selection widget, we have this function. So we want to send this info to it. So let's create two functions here. And we'll have start, draw, and end. So in here we're going to need a world reference, so we'll just check that that's valid. Always will be. You could probably skip this part, but I just like to put it. If check our box selection widget is valid, and then we can, this is where we're going to start drawing. So that variable that we created last time, which was the is box selection, we'll set that to true here. So that's where it's going to kick in, and then we'll start drawing our widget. So, and we're going to pass that variable. And then we're going to pass our selection start viewport location. We calculated in the select function. And then we're going to use our UWidget layout library again to get the mouse position on viewport. So this is the start position, and then this is the current position. So aka the end position in our function. And we just need to pass the world to that. And that was well. That is it. So that'll start the drawing. Well, that'll do the draw each tick, basically. So as start position will remain the same, and then the end position will move. So it'll adjust the size of the UI. So now we need to handle ending. I'm going to do the same here. We don't need the world reference for this one. We're just going to set our B box select to false. What I'm going to do is this bit. We're just going to pass 0 vectors through, so it's going to do F. Oh, sorry, it has to be F vector 2D. There we go, so that'll go through, and that'll stop the drawing box, and that we've got that set to disable the visibility and all that when this is false, so that'll sort that out. So now we want to use these functions, so we come back to our widgets off. So we come back to our select hold. So we've created the widget, now we want to talk to it. So one thing we want to do is when we're just doing normal click, we don't want the box selection to be doing anything. So what we're going to do is detect if the mouse has moved. So this is during a hold. So hold's a very short time. So if you're in a press, you'll probably hit this hold here. So what we want to do is you could probably put this above. Actually, yeah, let's do that. Because we don't want to create the widget if we're not going to do a box select, even though it only does that once. To check if the mouse has moved, we're going to check if the mouse input delta has changed. So we're going to need an X and a Y. And I'll use a semicolon this time, comma. So this is a function on the player controller. I'm just going to pass those. They'll be populated, and then we can check values are some number. I'm just going to do 0 for this, but if you want to be more of a threshold, what have I done there? You could probably work out some sort of threshold here, and you can have a bit of movement in the mouse before the box select kicks in. What's that saying is if the mouse has moved up or down at any amount, then we're going to kick off a box selection. We'll put a comment here. So now here we want to, well, the first thing we want to do is probably nullify a single selection. So if we're going to do a box selection, we don't want the single selection to do anything. So if we start a box selection over a unit, it's just going to ignore that. So if we did hit something, we're just going to change it back to a null pointer. So that's the on select here. So that'll be assigned to whatever we hit. We're just setting that to null. Just remember that, because if you ever want to use that, what's under the mouse as like a, I don't know, something more pertinent when you just start doing commands, you know, you might want to have a different command option when you put it over an enemy or something like that, but keep that in mind. So now we can start the box selection. So I shouldn't call it start because it's happening every tick here. So in fact, I'm going to change the name of that function. I'm going to change the name of this to perform. Start can be a bit misleading what it's doing. All right, so that's the visual side of the things done, but we haven't actually gone through selecting anything. So that's what we've got to do here. So we've got to actually update the selection or the client selection. We're going to just create a function here, update box selection, box selected, sorry, we'll use. Right, so this function is going to have quite a bit into it, so we're going to divide it up into multiple functions. So let's go through what we're going to create. First thing we're going to do is we're going to create the box selection planes. So we're on the client here, so we're going to need an array to start putting in the entities that are inside the box selections. So we're going to need to update that array with the entities inside the box. So let's call that update. I'll do. And then because our selections work based on groups, we're going to take those entities that we selected and get their groups and create a selection list basically out of the groups. We're going to expand on that later probably. So at the moment, like if you highlight over one unit out of a big group, it's going to highlight the whole group that entity is in. So, but we can alter that later and change that up. But for now, that's this initial phase. That's what it's going to do. So we're going to create the. So that'll create a sort of like a pending list of group selections, and then we're actually going to have we need, because the box selection is happening on tick, we need to factor in what happened the last tick. So like as you move the size of the selection box, you're going to have entities going in and out of that selection box. So we sort of need to update the previous list with what we've just selected in the new list. So there's going to be an update process there. So I'm just going to call it update pending. So this first one, we're going to need an array of f-plane. So that'll be our plane, so all the sides of our box, and then we're going to create those box selection planes. Passing in our planes. That'll be passed by reference, so we can keep it const. So let's create that function. And that needs to be by reference, so it comes back to us. Stop the word planes. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is check that our pawn is valid, and if it's not, we're going to return. So planes just will be empty. And the other thing we're going to need is a reference to the player's camera, and that's why we needed to check pawn. The camera component, that's going to include the camera component.h. And we can get the camera through the pawn. That should get us a reference to the camera. Now we need to get the X and Y of the mouse position. And we'll just get mouse position. So that mouse position will actually be the end screen location. So we have the start screen location. This will be the end screen location because it's where the mouse currently is in the box select. So just like we were doing with the widget, we had the start, which was fixed, and now we're updating the end location on tick. So now we need all the positions of our box. So left, right, top and bottom. So that's what we need to do. So I'm going to do a bit of copy pasting here. We're going to need some vectors. We'll start with left top, and we've got left top direction. Going to duplicate this a few times. Change this to right. And this would be down here, right bottom. So we've got left top, right top, left bottom, right bottom, left direction, right direction, left bottom direction, right bottom direction. That's all of them. We need to project the position from the screen to the world. Screen, yeah, there it is. Screen position to world, and then we're going to pass in the sort of similar to what we did with the widget. We're going to do the min of the select start screen location.x and end screen. Copy that and change it to y. Might just bring this down on another line so it's readable. And then at the end here, we've got to return our left top and left direction. So now it's sort of similar for the next one, but it's the max on the X. So change this to max and update these. Yep, that's right. And then the next one is the reverse, so it's going to be min for the x and max for the y. Update those variables. And then the last one is max max. Right. Now we can add our planes to our planes array. So I'm going to start at left bottom to left top. It doesn't really matter which order, as long as you just get all the planes in and they make sense. You're not going across the middle of the box or something like that. So left bottom, and we just need the camera component location. Now I'm going to duplicate 4 of them, or 3 more. And so I'm going from left bottom to left top to right top. And then I'm going to right top, right bottom, and then right bottom, back to left bottom. And that's our planes. If you're wondering, we're not actually using the directions, it's just an output of that function that we need to feed a variable into. So that's our planes done. So we'll come back up to our update box selection and go on with the next part. So like I said, we need a array of entities that we're gonna populate an array of entities that are inside the box selection. So we're just gonna have a T array of actors. Bit of a mouthful, but I don't want to confuse it with any other list. And then we're gonna have a function to update those. And we're gonna pass in our planes, and we're gonna pass in that array. And they'll both be by reference, because we want this list back for the next function. We can copy our planes. And if we go back here, we can copy this. Change that to by reference. Why did that do that? So here we need to divert a bit because we actually need a list of entities to cycle through. For a box selection, you're not going to box select an enemy's unit, right? You might be able to select it and get some sort of info about it, maybe not much, but like as a box selection, you don't want to include stuff that's not your units. So the player will have a list of units. So we're going to need to establish that list. So on the player controller, and we'll populate this list when we create the entities. I might make it protected and put it in here. And this is going to be replicated. The client will have access to this list because it'll be handy for when you want to update UI displays and stuff for the entities that the player has. I'll just call it player entities. And we'll add that to replication, including a network.h if you haven't already done that when we created the get replicated. Wait, I forgot to do something, maybe. I think we've gotten this. I wants to initialize our box selection widget. Let's put that in. I think, hang on, back here. Selections is not in there. Got to do that last time. And I might actually make a getter for public getter for like get all entities. Sorry. Working on here. So now we can do a for each over our entities. So it'll be our entities. We could just do all actors in the map or whatever, but this is just going to be a lot more efficient considering how fast it's happening. I don't know if you can hear the storm in the background, but sorry about that. So we want to see if it's inside the planes that we've established now. So we're just going to have a be inside, and we'll default that to true because we're actually going to check if it's on the outside. And we'll do another for loop for our, we'll just do it 4 times because we're just going to have those 4 planes. And then we need to do a dot product on our plane to see which side of the plane the actor or entity is on. So for our planes, do a plane dot, and then we pass in the position to our plane dot, and that'll be the position of our entity. I've got a good resource for trying to understand dot product. I'll just bring up a Google, and if you search for Freya Homer dot product and go, she's got some videos on like vector maths and stuff. It's pretty cool. But on her Twitch page, she's got this little diagram or animated GIF. So the way, let me just wait till this comes around. The way I visualize the dot product that we're doing with the planes, I'll just take a picture of this. So if our plane would be across like this, and this would be the normal of the plane. So the plane dot, what it's doing is it's getting the normal, getting the position of the entity and saying, which side of the plane is it on? So if it's above 0, if we're saying if it's equal to or greater than 0, then it's actually on the outside of the plane on the normal side, whereas the other side is on the inside. Now I may be wrong there, but that's how I got it right in my head. So if I am wrong, hit me up in the comments because I'd like to know. So essentially this dot product is going to tell us if it's on the outside. So if it is on the outside, we want to set the B inside to false. And we just want to break out of this loop on the planes. So I want to break out of this. If it's on the outside of any of the planes, then it's false. It's not going to be selected. So then at the end of the loop, check if it's still true. If it is, then they're on the inside. So we can add them to our client pending selection entities. And we just do add. We don't have to do add unique or anything like that because there'll be more resources and we don't really care for duplicates or anything like that at the moment. We're going to sort that out when we look at groups. But yeah, so that's our plane check. It's pretty simple, nice and fast. So now we need to get these entities that we've checked that are inside our box essentially. And so if we go back to our update selection, update box selection, we can do this create group selections now. So we want to create another array, and that'll be of the selections. We'll call this new pending selections. And we want to pass that to our create group selections function. And we want to pass our entities list like that. We want these guys and this guy. And that'll be by reference as well. Now in here, what we want to do is go through the entities and find out what their group is, and then add them to a pending selections list. So comment. So for each of our entities, we want to get the component so we can have a look what group they're in and compare it to the selections that we already have. So so we'll get a reference to our entity component. And that would have added the include, if it's not already there. Now we need just a bool to just say the group is already added. So if this is false, then we can go ahead and add the group after this check. So here we want to check if the entity or the entities group is already added. So we're checking our new list here that we're going to be adding to, which I haven't added to yet. So if the selection group is equal to the entities group, I don't think we've got a get group on there, so we're going to create that. Oh, entity component, sorry. Yeah, so there's no get group, so let's go create that. We'll just we want to return the group pointer. And then if the pending selections already has this group, then we just want to set this flag to false. Oh, sorry, to true. So it doesn't add another one. And if it is already in there, we can just break out of this loop. We don't need to keep checking the rest of the pending selections. And then after, so that'll break out of that for loop. And then we just need to check if the group added is false, then we need to add it. Sorry, it's not added. And now we need to create a player selection for it. So let's create player selection. And one thing I said I was going to do in the preview, and I remembered later, I forgot to go and do it, is on this function, I was going to set the default to the group. So in here, I'm just going to do equals selection type group selection. So then, because most of the time we're just going to be creating a group selection of the whole group. So just going to put that as default, then we don't have to pass anything. Here, this will be good to go, and then we'll just check if that new selection comes back valid. And if it does, we'll add it to our new pending. So now from the list of entities we had, we've now created a list of groups in the form of our group selection struct. So now what we need to do is we have that list of new pending selections, and that's new pending selections this tick. So we need to compare the selections of the previous tick, this tick, and either remove ones that aren't in there anymore or add the new ones. So we'll call this one without the entities on the end. And we're going to pass that new pending selection. Let's just start with a comment of what this is doing. So it's going to this. And the previous tick selections is actually going to be this client pending selections. That's what we're going to, in the end, that's what we're going to assign them to. So at the end of this function, this array here at the end of this function will only contain changes. So new selections, this tick. We're going to need another array of player selections again. This array is going to be a list of selections that are in the new pending and we're in the current pending. So it's the selections that are going to remain pending. So anything that's in the client pending list, that's in the new pending list, we want to remove from the pending list. So we're going to need a bool to just flag that after we check. So yeah, I'll just leave it as new and we'll set that to false. So now we need to check the actual pending list. So we'll do another for loop on the client pending selections. We want to check if the current client pending selection, so K for make a difference, but anyway. So we want to check that the group, if it's equal to the new pending selection group currently checking. And we've got to do two things. We want to add it to, so let's do a comment for that. If the group is found, add to the remain pending. And then if it's, and we need to remove it from the current pending. And the reason why we're doing that is so this list here for this current tick will become what's being removed. So bear with me. We're going to add the current check that we're doing, and either add the one that's in pending selections or the sorry, no. Okay. So we're basically saying that one, this one here is remaining selected or pending selection, and then we're also removing it from the client selection. And we're going to set that be remove through, and we can break out of this now because we've found a match. And then when we break out, we're going to do the same as before. If it is removed, we want to remove it from the new pending. So by the end of this loop here, so we've gone through and checked all our new pendings against the client pending. At the end of that loop, we should have only the old selections that need to be unselected or unhighlighted probably. So this is all happening while you're holding your mouse down and you're changing the size of the selection box. And then new pending will only contain any new ones. Remain pending will contain any that are staying, and we end up with an updated list. So the way we build that list now is hang on, before we do that, we need to, I'm just going to put this as a to-do, and this is why we have to have a list of selections that are no longer within the selection bounds, because as you move the selection box, you want to change their highlight or whatever to show that they will be selected if you let go of the mouse. So that's where this has got to happen. So I'm not going to go into that now, but we'll come back in a later part to do that. So we'll say this is, so that would have changed all the highlights. So we no longer need what's being deselected now or unhighlighted, whatever. So we can empty this. And then we can put back the ones that are staying. So that'll be the remain pending. Oops, I don't. We're just going to override it. So that's that. And then we can append any different ones. So client pending selections and new pending. And that is that. And now that is our update box selection done. Yep, so that's all good. And then now we can go on to selection N. So this is when you release your mouse button to do your box selection. So we're currently doing a box selection. We've got the check there. So now we want to end box selection. So end the raw box selection widget there. There will also be same as here. So we're going to need to handle like the box. That'll be handle their highlight and actually sending them and telling them that they're selected, the entities. We'll do that later. And then the same as here, we just need to send it to the server. We might actually just take it out here and put it down here. Because that will happen in both cases. Just the list is updated differently. Different things happen, the box selection or not. I'm just going to add, oops. Before we do a build, we need to add some references here. So we added developer settings. So I'm just in the private dependencies. I'm going to add developer settings. And we're also, because we're using UI, we're going to need to, of course, we're going to need to include UMG. That's all the user widget class and all that. So that'll stop some build errors. And then the other thing we're going to have to do is we've created this player controller in part 1, but we haven't actually told the game to use it. So what we want to do is we want to come down to, this is the actual source, so not a plugin in the actual project, because we've got some, so this is what the actual game is using at the moment. In here, it's referencing off the core, and we want to change that to entities. I need to get rid of that and replace it with entities include. That's all we need to touch in there. So with that upgraded and the build file set, let's try and build. An error here. Okay. Alright, I think I know what this is. I think it's just hasn't got enough data to have this reference here, so take out the struct. We take out the struct for declaration and replace it with the actual include. So we'll just take the include out of the CPP. Tuck it in here, so that should be better now. Yeah, that was it. So fire up the editor. So in here we have to do a couple of things. We'll just come to our entities folder here first, and we'll create a folder. I'm going to use the same folder structure as what's in C++, so framework and UI. And we'll create our widget in here. So it'll be box selection widget. We'll call it UE Box Selection widget. And all we need in here is canvas panel and a border. The border needs to be named box. And we can set a color. So if we come into brush, tint, I don't know, blue, to make a variable for this somewhere, and I'm going to just set the opacity down. Yep, that looks fine for now. That's all we need to do in there. Oh yep, we can come into project settings and we can assign that widget to the settings. That's that. Just those two things. So let's play and see what happens. We haven't got anything to select yet, but we do get a widget. So there we go, got a widget. So I'm gonna leave this part here. If you're having any issues getting your widget working, hit us up on Discord or in the comments if you think it's simple enough for the comments, but otherwise Discord, and if you're having real troubles, the project is available on my Patreon. Thanks for watching.